Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. If you're here today, then that means that you're interested in vintage or cottagecore clothes and you've come to the right place. Basically, over the years, I've had a lot of messages on Instagram of people saying, I like the way you dress, but I'm a complete newbie to the entire vintage dressing thing and I don't even know where to start. So if you feel like that as well, then you've come to the right video. Because I thought it would be nice to kind of chat about which items would be handy to have if you just want to build a little small vintage capsule, and which brands to look at, and just generally my experience of getting more into vintage dressing. So first of all, obviously vintage dressing is quite a vague term. I feel like obviously there's people who dress more like properly historically correct, and then there's the historically inspired vintage vibes community that I would consider myself a part of. So none of the things I do are historically correct, and I don't actually aim for that either. When I first started dressing historically, I was very obsessed with kind of like getting things right, and also got very upset because I obviously didn't really get things right, and then would look at older pictures of myself and be like, oh my god, can you believe I wore a petticoat that was longer than my skirt? But I feel like that's very restrictive, especially to yourself. If you always aim for perfection, it's really hard to kind of like allow yourself to make mistakes and to experiment a little bit more and just find your own style. So I do actually have a video out there that is called Why I Dress Edwardian-ish, and I should have probably rewatched that because I don't actually remember what I told you there. But I have this thing where I will edit my videos and I'll put them out there, and if you force me to ever watch them again, I will cringe so hard. I'll just be on the verge of deleting everything and never doing a video again. So I just completely ignored that video for myself. I'm just acting like, it didn't happen. So if I repeat myself or if I completely contradict myself, I'm sorry. Years and years ago, I first got into historical fashion because I watched the Spanish drama Gran Hotel. Looking back, it doesn't actually have that amazing costumes, but it was new to me, and the whole Edwardian aesthetic, I loved it. And obviously I've always kind of struggled with modern fashion because I naturally have quite a small waist, quite a small frame in general, but I have massive hips. Jeans just don't work. Also, I'm just very self-conscious about my legs, and I always felt like I didn't want to show them. And obviously trousers very much emphasize your legs, and it's just something I've always been really, really self-conscious about. So I felt like I wanted to wear skirts that were longer, but I grew up in Germany, and it's a funny thing because nowadays when I look at the vintage community, I see so many vintage dressers from Germany, and I'm just like, where were you guys when I lived in Germany? And I would wear like an H&M short skirt, and people would be like, why are you wearing a skirt for? It's like, you can buy this off High Street. I'm literally like not doing anything wrong. For me, starting to dress vintage was more actually about dressing in a way that was good for my shape and that made me feel comfortable. Like I never would actually like get up and say, oh, I want to dress 1940s. It's just more like, oh, this silhouette works for me. And then that's kind of like how I got more into vintage dressing, because I realized these silhouettes used to be worn quite frequently by women all the time. It's almost like they're made for the female shape. Yeah, so that's how I got into vintage dressing, just kind of wearing things that actually suited me, and then finding more inspiration by looking at what used to be worn back in the days. And obviously the title also talks about cottagecore, which I feel like isn't necessarily a vintage style, obviously, but it's very much inspired by vintage styles. So I feel like they can go hand in hand. Cottagecore can be vintage, and vintage clothes can be cottagecore. I don't even feel like I'm necessarily very cottagecore-y, but everything can be styled in a cottagecore way. So we'll just cover the entire spectrum of vintage, dreamy, princess-like cottagecore, dark academia dressing here. I used to dress more Edwardian inspired, and that was kind of like the aesthetic that I personally just really, really adored. And still up to this day, I think it's my favorite look to see on people. I love Edwardian dresses. I love the pigeon breast and the skirts, and it's just really lovely. But I've actually realized over the years I don't like the pigeon breast style on myself. So that's why I've been starting to wear more like 1890s inspired things, or even more kind of like 30s and 40s inspired things. I just don't really put a stamp onto what era I'm actually wearing. I just wear things I enjoy nowadays, and they all kind of read vintage historically inspired. But then when people come up to me on the street and they're like, oh, is that 1940s? And I'm like, no. Skirt is Edwardian, the blouse is Primark, the cardigan is 1940s, the shoes 1930s, the hair nothing at all really. Because obviously people like to always point out, being like, actually, you know, Edwardian ladies did not wear their hair open. And I'm like, oh my god, what? I never knew. I just take a lot of pride in my hair being so ridiculously long nowadays, so I just like wearing it open. But yeah, so that is a very long backstory basically to my vintage journey. But so let's get back to you guys and my advice to you. If you're someone who likes the aesthetic but doesn't actually own any of these pieces yet, where should you start? If you don't own anything yet that reads vintage dressing, cottagecore, if you could only get one item, I would say get yourself a circle skirt. Because skirtle skirts. Because circle skirts have an amazing swoosh without needing any petticoats or anything underneath. But also they're not super overly costumey. So you can actually probably get circle skirts quite easily even in the shops, because it is a popular style. What reads vintage is obviously using linens, cottons, wool. I've got this really nice circle skirt from Little Women Atelier, and it's one of my favorite go-to skirts. I've had this one for years and it just works with any look. So even if you want to combine it with a t-shirt, which I don't necessarily do that much, but sometimes, you know, even in Scotland it gets warm in summer, so you'll maybe see me wearing something like this to work just because I'm like, it's 30 degrees and I'm dying. But it's just such an easy piece to style and to integrate into your wardrobe without looking over the top costumey. Other than Little Women Atelier, you can also get similar skirts from Flor, but I'm also quite sure if you just go to High Street on the shops, you may be able to find a circle skirt as well. Then if you're able to get a second item, I would say get yourself a little cute white blouse, made preferably from light, thin cotton. I usually make my own blouses from bed sheets just to avoid the ironing bit. But I also own quite a lot of blouses that just came from High Street, because sometimes you'll actually find brands like H&M, or I have a blouse from a brand called Reserved. It's always worth just checking, because you'd be surprised the amount of blouses that actually work for this kind of theme as long as you style them right. So the next thing I'd say, if you can get yourself a cardigan, you know, to layer up, that would be an amazing item to own as well, especially the ones that are cropped and end at the waist, because most cardigans you can find in the shops are long enough to reach the hips, and then obviously you kind of get this ball shape that's not very flattering and not very vintage looking. So I've actually got a million cardigans, and they're all from Emmy Design, and I absolutely love them. Just cardigans that have a little bit of a poof up here, and the cinched in waist will give you an absolutely stunning silhouette. You can try wearing them over things that aren't fitted to the waist. So maybe sometimes at home I would wear one of those cardigans over my leggings and my t-shirt. Doesn't really work, but also no one's stopping you doing it if that's what you want. I just feel like in general, if you're aiming for a vintage silhouette, you should try to emphasize the waist. So this goes against everything that Gen Z is currently trying to teach us, that, you know, high-waisted jeans are out and low-waisted jeans are the new thing that everyone should be wearing, whereas I still have nightmares from the early 2000s, so I don't think you'll ever see me wearing anything that's low-waisted. Last item for the basic list of things that you should have for your capsule is some really nice lace-up boots, because I know people tend to wear sports shoes, sneakers, tennis shoes, I don't even know what to call them. I am not a stranger to these kind of shoes because I grew up as an emo girl. So I had my whole collection of Vans that I absolutely adored. But it's just not necessarily a vintage look if you style your cute little circle skirt with some Nikes. So owning a nice solid pair of lace-up boots, you know, it doesn't have to be fancy brand. I used to get mine from Deichmann and they would last me a season and then I'd have to throw them away because they weren't amazing quality. So I feel happier now that I've got some good quality ones that I can wear for multiple years. It's not just single wear shoes, but just to finish off the look. So then you've got your skirt, your blouse, your cardigan and your shoes, and you're honestly good to go. And from here you can kind of start maybe buying some more items and combine them, but with that kind of like capsule you can definitely do a vintage look and combine it with modern items and it will still read vintage. And from here we go on to the big question, where do I buy these items? As I mentioned before, I actually sew sew a lot of these things myself, but obviously not everyone can sew. And even I myself really like to treat myself to dresses that I didn't make myself. So let's just talk about some brands that I own myself and that I really adore. I have worked with some of these brands before. Everything I wear after a collaboration is just me wearing it because I like it. First of all, I've mentioned this already, Emmy Design from Sweden. They're a little brand. They do clothes that are kind of like Edwardian inspired up to like 40s, 50s inspired. So they've got the whole range of vintage clothes depending on which era you're interested in. And they do these amazing cardigans. And like I said, I'm a sucker for them. I actually was wearing one of their cardigans before I started filming. I've worn this one too many times already in my videos, and it will just seem like I only ever wear the exact same thing. But the pine green one was my first cardigan from them, and I love it so much. And they're lovely quality, they're so warm. But I also own some other things from them. So I've got like an Edwardian skirt, I've got some blouses, I've got this little cute 1930s skirt. So just a whole range, and I really, really like the things they do. They're amazing quality and their designs are just really nice. Like their silhouettes are cut for quite a curvy shape, so that works really well for me. Another brand I mentioned already is Little Women Atelier, which is a Kazakhstan and US based brand, and I really, really love their designs. I feel like they were one of the original kind of like cottagecore brands that started doing linen dresses and selling them on Etsy. And they have been a huge inspiration for my own sewing journey throughout the years, because whenever they come up with new designs, I'm like, it's just so iconic. And you've probably seen lots of people wearing their dresses because they're genuinely just so lovely. I own 5 dresses, 4 dresses, and then a skirt blouse combination. And I will not rest until I've got every single one of their dresses. So they name their dresses after Little Women characters. So you've got the Meg one, the Jo, Beth and Amy. I'm still missing the Amy dress, so maybe Little Women Atelier, if you want to send me one, please do. But I just love their dresses, and I love wearing them daily. I love wearing them for shootings, and I will never ever get sick of them. Another brand you will have seen many people wear is Flor. They do these amazing circle skirt dresses that have the little Peter Pan collars. So iconic, and I've got multiple of their dresses as well, and they're just like really lovely quality and hold up so well throughout the years. So they're based in Lithuania. Is that how you pronounce it? Lithuania? Is that Litauen in German? You'll realize if you look up these brands, many of the dresses are quite expensive. Rightfully so, though, I should mention, because people tend to complain about a dress being £250. But then as a seamstress, you know, I know how much effort goes into making a dress and how much fabric costs, especially if it's nice linen. So I feel like it's justified. People don't always seem to notice that. But if you actually pay your seamstresses, that's how much a dress should cost. A brand that's a bit cheaper is Simple Retro. They've had multiple of their dresses throughout the years, and I do really like their designs, especially throughout summer. They come out with these really cute, light Edwardian dresses. They're a little bit more budget friendly. Another brand that I really adore is Boria. They're France-based, and they do these really cute, more folklore-inspired dresses. So I've got one of their dirndl dresses, which I've had for years now as well. It's really, really nice, thick quality, and really lovely embroidery on it. It's an easy piece to style as well, because with the dirndl dresses you can just throw it over a little blouse, and I've always felt like I really like dirndl dresses. And living in Germany, I've always wanted to have a dirndl, but I'm not a party goer, so I'd never go to like Oktoberfest parties because it's just not my kind of crowd. But also I should mention I lived in the industrial part of Germany. That's not like the nice, pretty Bavarian kind of like countryside that you may imagine if you think about Germany. So people would be like, but when would you ever wear a dirndl? So I actually only got a dirndl when I moved to Scotland, and I wore it all the time because it's a nice, easy thing to style. Another brand I bought a dress from in autumn is Echoes of Passerine. Excuse my French. They're now US based, and they had this really cute kind of like big Peter Pan collar, big poofy sleeve dress in a mustard color, and I saw it on Rachel Maxey, and put anything on Rachel Maxey and I'll buy it. So I immediately ordered it, and I really like it. And then another one of the brands that I really like is Gibson Girl. They're Ukraine based, and they specialize in more Edwardian clothes. So I actually own a dress of theirs and coat. The coat is one of my absolute favorites. It's so thick, so warm. It's got these amazing late Victorian sleeves, and they just do a range of kind of like very simple Edwardian skirts that can be worn daily. So very similar to actually the skirts I make myself. Also, they use linen, and it's just very nice things they make. On the other hand, they also have a range of more kind of like fancier, more dressy, costumey dresses, like the one I own. So let's talk about shoe brands now, because there's a handful of little brands that make historically inspired shoes, and I own shoes from all of them because I like shoes. First of all, Memory, a Denmark-based brand, I think. I mainly own their more 1940s, 1930s inspired shoes, and I wear these to work all the time. I saw someone comment somewhere asking me whether they're comfortable, but I am terrible with actually replying to comments. So let me tell you here now, they're super comfortable, especially their white range is so good. My brown pair I've now owned for like 1.5 years. They go through a lot, you know. They have to withstand Glaswegian weather, you know, it's always wet, always raining. I had to resole them because they have leather soles, and obviously it's just too wet here for leather soles. Holding up very well. I fell over a stop sign at some point and scratched the front and was really annoyed. But other than that, honestly, I wear them for shootings. They go ankle deep into the mud, and I clean them off and they look nice again afterwards. So really great quality. No signs of breakage or anything after all of the things I put them through. I also have a black pair, which I don't know, I just love them so much. Then there's American Duchess. They now have a European-based store as well, but they're based in the US, I think, mainly. And they do just a whole range of Edwardian boots to like vintage shoes. I have a pair of button-up boots from them, which I really love, though I have super thick calves, so I had to move the buttons, which means they're now a little bit kind of like out of shape. So I'm always thinking maybe I should redo that at some point, but just sewing through that leather hurt my fingers so much, so I'm never really that keen to redo the whole process. And I've got 2 pairs from Oak Tree Farms. They're also American-based. The ones I've got, I bought off eBay, so it's just one of those things I follow on eBay, and if anything new comes up in the UK, I'll buy them if they're my size. Very lovely soft leather, really nicely made. Then there's Joe Bear boots, who are based in Portugal, and those, they made my wedding boots and I absolutely love them. And then later I asked them for a custom pair that was 2 colored, so the top of it is green and the bottom was brown, and Jo is honestly so lovely and she takes a lot of time talking to you about your order, and I feel like I spent a lot of time chatting with her throughout the years, but I really adore what they've made. And honestly, one of those shoes that I've worn again through all of these different kinds of environments and holding up really well, and I really love the shoes so much. Then something I will not show you, but I will tell you, for underwear, I like to wear what Katie did. So basically, because you don't need to wear a corset or a bullet bra to wear vintage clothes, but often these undergarments are what makes it actually look vintage. If you're interested in these things, I would definitely say have a look at what Katie did. I love the bullet bras. It's just one of those things that I wear all the time, and Jack will be like, your boobs look very pointy. But it's all part of the silhouette, and obviously I wear a corset all the time. I make my corsets myself, but I also have one from what Katie did. It's their demi corset, which is actually stretchy. I just put in a non-stretch cotton waistband like the ones I would have in normal corsets, and that is actually the corset I wear every day to work. I love wearing corsets. It just feels like a really tight, good hug. It helps with back pains, and it just makes me feel happy to wear them. I know there's a lot of controversy around corsets, but honestly, if a corset hurts you, then you're wearing the wrong corset. It's kind of like saying shoes are terrible because some of them hurt. You may just not be wearing the right size or the right shape, so the same goes for corsets. It's just a structural undergarment, and especially when you wear these skirts that are really tight on the waist, that may cause pain, and the corset just shields your stomach, so it's just really a functional garment. Bag brands. Because a little cute vintage bag is always a nice thing to have. I have bags from Ecco Susie. I've worked with them a lot throughout the years. Actually, their backpacks I wear to work every single day. So I've got the black one and the brown one because I like having things in different colors, as you have seen with my Emmy Design cardigans. So Ecco Susie mainly uses fake leather, so plastic, which is nice for the vegans, but also I like using leather because it means that I can use the item for years and years and years to come. So for that sake, I actually prefer a brand called Boria. But they make vintage inspired purses that are made from leather, and they're really lovely quality. And I've got one of theirs, and it's just really nice. What can I say? Another brand that I've been working with is Well Read. They make these little book inspired crossover bags, and even though it's not necessarily vintage or cottagecore, but it's just really, really cute. And as a bookish girl myself, love nothing more than a little book hanging around me that I can use as a bag. So now that we've covered all of the brands, obviously it's not exhaustive. There are so many more brands out there, but these are just the ones that I own myself. On the other hand, if you like sewing, there is so much out there to use to make your own vintage clothes. I usually get my patterns off Etsy. I prefer working with vintage patterns over working with modern patterns. It fits my shape better. I don't know, modern patterns often have super wide shoulders. The waist is just way too high. So I really prefer working with vintage patterns. And just if you put something like Edwardian dress into Etsy, Edwardian dress, PDF sewing or something, you'll get such a huge range of things to choose from. And obviously you'll need to be able to sew for that, but it's really, really lovely. At least for me, it really helped me explore my own style, because if you're just kind of looking at reproductions, you're a little bit more aware of what era you're actually working with. But with sewing, it gives you the freedom to model it more to your own silhouette. But also, even if you're not a seamstress, I would say learning the basics of mending clothes is gonna be really, really useful for you throughout the years. Because if you wear genuine vintage clothes, they will need a lot of maintenance over the years. But even with those linen dresses, and I feel like this is again one of those misconceptions, you know, someone buys a dress for £250 and then something breaks on it, and people are like, you know, can you imagine a seam ripped? Yes, I can, because seams will rip throughout the years. So even if you buy these really nice, well-made dresses, they will tear at some point. And that doesn't mean they're not well-made. That just means, you know, you wore them. You probably washed them in the washing machine and put them in the tumble dryer. Seams will rip, and that's normal. But these dresses can be mended, as opposed to like things you buy maybe off Primark or something that will actually tear in the fabric, and that will make you go, you know, maybe I should just throw it away. But with these linen dresses, you know, you can mend them. You can bring them to a tailor if you want to, but also if there's just like a little ripped stitch or something, you can just hand sew it back. You know, buttons may come off, so it's really, really good set of skills to have. So as a little side note, let's talk about the vintage dressing community, because I actually filled out a questionnaire for someone's master's thesis, and the questions were kind of like, is the vintage community very judgmental, and can you only get into it if you're like blah blah blah? No. At least my experience, the vintage community, so like let's say Instagram, you know, the people I talk to are so lovely and so open-minded and welcoming. And often I talk to people and I ask them for advice, because I'll be like, I don't know, I'll make something and I'm like, I don't actually know how to sew this, and then I talk to people and they explain how I should do it. Or someone's wearing something nice and you ask them, you know, oh, I love what you're wearing, where is it from? And they'll tell you, you know, they're not really, what's the word, gatekeeping. You know, people just share the love for all of these silhouettes, and they're very happy to talk about it and help you find your own way. If you're scared of like other people on the internet who are more into vintage dressing judging you for not doing it properly, don't be, because we all, most of us don't do it properly anyways. We just love it, and there's nothing more fun than talking to people who enjoy the same things. So everyone will be super happy to chat to you and to give you advice and to just share the love for old silhouettes. The one thing I feel like I personally have not experienced as much, but I see so many people in the vintage community wielding the phrase vintage style, not vintage values, like some kind of shield. And I'm not sure if they had more experience of people coming up to them and being like, you wear a skirt, you must be a racist. To me, that never happened. So I've never been in a situation where someone assumed I had traditional values that were not appreciated nowadays just based on the way I dress. And that marks the end of the video. And here's the cat. So basically, I hope this was useful to you guys at all. I definitely enjoyed chatting about all of these things. Again, you know, I love vintage clothes. I love talking about them. I love talking to you guys. If you could dress in any kind of period, which one would you choose? With that, I'm going to say goodbye, and I will see you in my next video. Bye-bye.